Hi, my name is Abigail, and this is my channel, Do It Yourself Deluxe. I also have an Instagram channel called Wandering Peacock House and a TikTok with that same name. In this video, I'm going to be doing a combination of two things. I'm going to be making a giant 20-foot by 10-foot outdoor sculpture out of cement. I would prefer marble, but marble is very expensive. And I'm also going to be discussing how I became a fire goddess. Actually, I became a belly dancer, fire dancer professionally for, I guess, 5 years, and that journey, which was very interesting. And the way they relate is because I'm going to be making a specific goddess head, which is called Anatolia. It's a goddess from Turkey. They're also called Sybil, I believe, and a couple of other names. And but I use this name as my performer stage name. I called myself Anatolia Fire Goddess because if you're going to be a belly fire dancer professionally, you got to have a crazy name. And yeah, so today I'm going to be making an Anatolia. Well, it's going to take me longer than today, but today is going to be a video on making a Anatolia head. So I hope you enjoy the background of becoming a fire dancer and what that entails and my journey, and how to make a giant head in your backyard if you choose to do something crazy like this.
I first discovered this goddess while traveling and studying in Greece. She was in the museum, off on the side, displayed with just a simple plaque, Earth Mother Goddess. The teacher never covered her, no one really looked at her, but as soon as I saw her, I was obsessed. On top of her head was this beautiful depiction of a city, and although she was smashed up, I was so intrigued by her image. I later found out that she goes by a number of names, and sometimes she's displayed with literally thousands of breasts. Other times she's on display with two pet lions that just flank her side, looking epic as ever. Therefore, when I made the life-changing, adventurous career choice of becoming a fire belly dancer, I inevitably took on the goddess name Anatolia. And now that I put the fire poi away and have retired, I want to remember this career in the sculpture I'm doing and remember the goddess that I found very significant in my artistic journey. For the Anatolia sculpture that I'll be creating in this video, the concept has morphed a bit. The cityscape will be New York City, where I have danced, and which is the city closest to me. And the goddess will have literally fallen on its side, which is significant and profound on many levels and aspects of my life. To begin, I will have to start with the frame. I had to go to Home Depot to get the bones of this project, which is reinforcement bar. And then at first I didn't take a video of it, but I spent probably a day trying to cut maybe 2 pieces of reinforcement bars, not even bend it, but just cut it with a Sawzall and a metal blade, and it just killed the blade, didn't work. So for this project, I would be not able to function without this reinforcement bar cutter and bender. Has been an absolute miracle on this project. I'm able to get all these little bends. It's a little bit difficult to use, a lot of muscle strength, and it's super heavy. It has bruised my toes from moving it around. Sometimes hard to get the angles right, especially when you want to go 90 degrees one way and then another way. It could be a little difficult, but it has definitely made this project manageable. Belly dance started off as just a passion of mine. I took many classes in it, and I really decided to make it a career when I decided to write a book on belly dance. Fire dancing is a completely different thing than belly dancing, although they are often combined to a degree. For the most part, they are completely different art forms. I first saw fire dancing in a festival on the street. Shortly after I started integrating fire dancing and belly dancing, I got offered at a fire and ice show in Sharm el Sheikh, Egypt, and decided to go to Egypt. The way one sticks rebar together is by welding the pieces with an arc welder. Now, it took me a week to find the right welder without spending a fortune and still getting a good enough weld for it to actually be structurally sound. I found a decent one for $500. I was really spoiled before with my other projects because, ironically, a fire performer gave me a welder to make all my fire crowns. I'm really hesitant to go into welding in much detail because there's a lot of videos on how to weld on YouTube and a lot of information, and I'm actually a really bad welder. So, with my crowns, I used to cover up all my funky joints with gems, and with this, it's going to be covered with concrete. I started the big buildings not in place and then put them in position for where the sculpture was going to be permanently. But this became more and more challenging. So the rest of it, the time, I just started to weld in place where the inevitable sculpture will be. My journey on becoming a professional dancer truly started in Egypt. And when I arrived, I was completely over my head. To be perfectly honest, I never took an actual dance class in my life. I was only into belly dance specifically and only took belly dance classes, which is kind of not the same thing. My roommates absolutely hated me. One was from St. Petersburg and mostly did these kind of clown acts that were not part of the actual dance company. The other was a prima ballerina from Moscow, and they both thought I was a complete joke. Fortunately, my boss was a lovely choreographer from Switzerland and didn't kick me out of the program, the dance company, and instead she gave me ample opportunity to perfect my skill on stage. And although I had many days of crying because my Russian dance partners were screaming at me for not getting simple choreography right, I really am grateful for the opportunity I had in Egypt to perfect my skills.
So this is my goddess head so far. As you can see, here's the head, or you might not be able to see yet. Here's the head, and here's the cityscape. So it's going to be the hair is going to be fluffing around the cityscape of this goddess head. Of course, it's turned on its side because it's the fallen goddess of New York. And you could see the bridges. So one of the bridges to kind of mesh with everything, flow with the head. So here's the going to be the Brooklyn Bridge, the Manhattan Bridge. These are going to be kind of roads tying in the hair. The hair is going to be pretty wild. This is the this building right here is a Flatiron. I used to live near it. Um, Here is going to be Grand Central, one of my favorites. I like it more inside, but of course I can't showcase that in the sculpture. My absolute favorite, the Chrysler. That's my favorite building that is a skyscraper for sure. And the Empire, and I forgot the name of this one, but I thought it was a nice looking building, and I needed a kind of another building to put in. So the way this sculpture works is to make a cement sculpture, you use reinforcement bar, rebar, not rhubar. I always call it rhubar, and people think I'm mentally challenged. Side note, that's a car that just drove by. One of the reasons I'm doing this sculpture is to block out the cars. And this is another reason I'm going to be doing it heavy on the reinforcement bar, is because it needs to be lifted by crane. Because I'm so close to this road right here that is parallel to my property, I need it to be movable. And the more reinforcement bars, the more it's able to be movable by crane, which is what it needs to be done to make it codes. So technically, it's movable by a crane, um, and you want it structurally sound, so you want to do that anyways. Um, After I'm done with this, I'm going to be doing a mesh over it, and then I'm going to be doing the cement over that. So it's going to be a way to think of it is you have the bones. These would be the bones, and they're very important because they hold the shape together. And then the tendons and the muscles would be the mesh. And really, you want to do a thin layer, no more than 4 inches, I believe, of this particular cement, which you want to think of it as like the skin, what you're showing. So you're not going to show any of these reinforcement bars, but you do want them to hold the shape of the form you're going to make, because you can't have it all wobbly all over the place and not structurally sound. So that's how you do it. So if you want to have something in your backyard, a giant sculpture like this, I suggest going to zoning first to see what you can actually do before you're have your neighbors complaining. Like, I'm sure these neighbors are probably going to complain.
I really started to settle in my dance group when the juggler left, leaving a void in the production. He did something called contact juggling, which is a crystal ball that looks like ice, which fit perfectly in our production called Fire and Ice. Contact juggling was invented by a juggler named Michael Motions, and you might have seen this act in the movie The Labyrinth, where David Bowie was rolling around this illuminated and kind of crystal ball. It was actually Michael Motion behind David Bowie during the whole production, where David Bowie was pretending that Michael Motion's hands doing these fine little movements with the crystal ball was actually him, which was a really cool effect in The Labyrinth. Meanwhile, in the Fire and Ice production, I decided to take contact juggling and combine it with belly dance. I thought the dangerous part of this project was behind me with the welding, but it was certainly not the case. Working with the metal mesh was like working with razor blades. I ripped holes in every garment I wore and tore to shreds a pair of gloves, cutting my knuckles in the process, so I had to tape them up and buy new and sturdier gloves. The worst part was when I decided to take off my sweatshirt because it got hot, and because I only had a t-shirt and my arms were exposed, I just sliced a really deep gash into my arm. But all my pain was worth it when the sculpture slowly settled into the forms I envisioned. So I continued to cut pieces, then cut little flaps to fold over the ray bar, adjusting it into place and pressing it down. Sometimes when there was no space to flap it over and no rhubarb to attach it to, I used the rhubarb wire to sew it into place. For the first few months of working in Sharm el-Sheikh, I put all my attention towards the show. I made an actual effort to not really wander off the resort, which was fine by me because Sharm el-Sheikh is gorgeous where the resorts are. There's the most stunning beaches to go scuba diving or just relax on the sandy beaches. It's absolutely gorgeous. Sharm el-Sheikh is on the Red Sea, and it's actually closer to Israel and Jordan than it is to Cairo and the Great Pyramids. Plus, when I went there was really do not travel restrictions, totally dangerous en route to Cairo as opposed to Jordan and Israel. You can understand that I was really hesitant to travel with a situation like this, but then I started dating a fire performer in my group named Zaki. He was an Egyptian fire performer, and we really connected, as you could see in this video, when we did Partner Poi on stage. And I decided that maybe it would be fun to travel with him because he was a local, and he really told me you cannot go to Cairo. He wouldn't go to Cairo, and he's from Cairo, because it was just so dangerous. He told me he knew people who got killed on the bus traveling there. So I just opted out not to go there and to do some other sites around Sharm el-Sheikh. My first little excursion was on the Sinai Peninsula, and we took a sunrise hike to Moses Mountain, which I believe was a couple hours away from Sharm el-Sheikh. I went with my boyfriend Zaki and another girl from the group who was from, her name was Katie, and she was from England. We hit a kind of a drama en route because we had an option of taking a British-American tour bus or a Egyptian-Russian tour bus. And because the price was so much cheaper, we took the Russian-Egyptian tour bus. And apparently the driver freaked out when he saw my American passport, because you have to have an armored guard by law when doing these kind of transportations for Americans. So he was afraid he was going to be thrown in jail if the police see that there was an American on board without this service. So it was kind of an interesting shock to see what is going on behind the tour scenes in Egypt. But fortunately, no one caught us and we were perfectly fine. The hike was a nighttime hike, and you're supposed to really watch the sunset from the mountain. And it was kind of a religious experience. There was a lot of nuns and religious people doing the hike. And my boyfriend, who's Muslim, had a lot of conflicting thoughts about this religiously. So that was pretty interesting experience, and it was a beautiful hike. Now, I got bit by a little bit by the travel bug, so I decided to take another trip. This time I couldn't bring my boyfriend because I had my heart set on the Israel Jordan excursions that they offered from Sharm el-Sheikh. And just like before, they had the Russian and Egyptian tours, and then they had the American and British tours. And the price difference was so huge that, again, I took the Russian tour. There was not much of a problem on the bus going over until I hit Israel. Now, I was reading 2 books in the bus. I brought with me 50 Shades of Grey and the Quran. And the Quran was really a hard read, and 50 Shades of Grey was not. So I finished 50 Shades of Grey in the bus, and I just had with me the Quran and my crystal ball that I was using for my shows when I arrived in the border of Israel and Egypt. And the Israeli officers thought I was such a wackadoodle. I think they flagged me as maybe a potential terrorist or something, because they held me in detention for a couple of hours. I was the only one they did this to, and they scanned my things repeatedly. They wondered what this crystal ball was, why I had the Quran, and I know it looked a little crazy, but it was just a very circumstantial thing that was going on. I was in a Muslim country, so I felt like reading the Quran was a thing to do, and it was a slow read for me. I actually never finished it. So I understand why there was a miscommunication, but it was kind of a jarring way to enter Israel, honestly. But I actually became friends with the officers at the end of it. It kind of turned into a joke. They made it clear there wasn't too many Americans doing the ground transportation, and the rest of my time in Israel was very nice. And Jordan, oh my God, Petra is just so spectacular. It was a dream come true, and I could probably have spent a whole week in Petra, honestly. It's just like so gorgeous. Israel, I didn't really connect with as much as Petra, because I'm more of a historical person as opposed to a religious historical person. But I highly recommend going to Jordan and seeing Petra. It's just beyond gorgeous. It's, for those who might not know, you might have seen it in the movie Indiana Jones, some of the images. Absolutely gorgeous. So when I came back to my group, that was the last trip I took, and I settled right back into performing. The next step with the Goddess Head was working out the details. One of the details I wanted to work on was the lips. I wanted the lips to be very, very large, because this to me was a contemporary ideals of femininity in our daily life. And with all the lip injections, I think having really large lips is very much relevant. So I started doing the lips, and when I started doing the details in general, I kind of figured out that I probably should start the cement first, to kind of have a base to stick the details to, because it was the wire mesh was just kind of not forming together and kind of popping out when I popped smaller pieces in. So I was ready for the next step, which was the cement. Egypt really ended for me on a high note. I really started to get along with my group, especially my Russian ballerinas. One of the Russian ballerinas told me that I was just like a different performer, that she, when she first met me, she was just horrified and said she talked to her boyfriend at the time, Muhammad, about how terrible I was. And later on, she was talking about me, and Muhammad said, "Is that the same performer?" And she said, "Yes." And so I kind of, found my place in the group, found my way. I was more of a creative type than a traditional dancer, of course, but I really listened and learned and made some really incredible friends. And then I got a phone call to come back to America. A lady named Nancy Gross, who said she was working on a reality TV show with her media company on fire performers, and she really liked my work and she needed me to fly back home. Her husband, who was like her tandem media person, I guess used to be a rock star or kind of a wannabe rock star from the 80s. Wasn't quite sure, but they were calling me to come home. I did set them up with some fire performers whilst in Egypt, and it just wasn't working out. So I had to fly back and do a reality TV show on fire performers. So it really was an opening to being independent. And that's when things really started, performing in New York. And I have to tell you, it was a crazy roller coaster ride. And I'll have to get into that detail in another video because I'm realizing there's a lot to unpack about being a fire goddess. So I'm extremely exhausted. I've been doing the mesh for a few days now, but and I keep on, as you can see, slicing myself up. So I'm gonna stop with the mesh for now and start doing the cement, but this video is going a little bit too long, so I'm gonna break it up into 2 videos. And so please watch the second video. Again, thank you for watching this far. And in the next video, I'm gonna be doing how I'm gonna put the cement over this to make it look like a stone carved sculpture for the backyard. Yeah, continue to watch, and if you want to see more of this content, please subscribe to my channel, Do It Yourself Deluxe on YouTube. Also check out my Instagram and TikTok, which is called Wandering Peacock House, which is this house where I Airbnb. So you can actually come here and Airbnb and see the statue in real life. Soon we're actually going to have a cold plunge over here, and the sun is over here, so it's a kind of a cool location for this sculpture. I hope you guys enjoyed, and stay tuned to the next one.